You might think you need to be the outdoorsy type or an enlightened philanthropist to start an impactful conservation effort. But sometimes all you need is to be at the right place at the right time. Today we mark Arbor Day Hawaiʻi by bringing you the story of a mechanic-turned-conservationist, Tyrone Montayre. In 2018, Montayre unexpectedly found himself the owner of 330 acres of preservation land on Oʻahu. The Conversation's Russell Subiano spent a Saturday morning with Montayre and a group of volunteers amidst the foliage in Pia Valley in East Honolulu.
Well, good morning, everyone.
That's Tyrone Montayre, greeting a group of volunteers ready to pull invasive species and plant trees. He's the founder and president of the nonprofit Protect and Preserve Hawaiʻi. Its mission: to protect Hawaii's native ecosystem by restoring Pia Valley in East Oʻahu. Montayre grew up in Makakilo, above the sounds of revving engines and cheering crowds at Hawaii Raceway Park. That sparked his interest in the metal-geared and gasoline-fueled world of automotive maintenance and repair. And for most of his adult life, he worked as a mechanic until tragedy struck.
May 1st, 2018, my mother actually passed away after battling cancer for a number of years. Still grieving about it. One day I was walking to work at my other mechanic job, and I passed by this house that said it was going to be up for auction. Through the years, I always looked up real estate, and I always dreamt of having, some property or investments. So I went to that auction, trying to buy a condo or some kind of piece of property. At the end of that auction, I ended up coming home with a 330-acre parcel of preservation land instead. I didn't know what to do with it. Just felt like a great opportunity to own that much land in Hawaii. So what I did was just, besides freaking out, I just started doing research and figuring out what I could do with it. If you're not familiar with the area, there's Hawaii Lower Ridge to the front of me and Kulepeomoa to the back. The next ridge over, more popularly known as Kuli'o'o. So the first thing, I was not into conservation. I didn't know what to do with it. In 2019, I decided to do it on my own. Since then, we started reaching out to all these organizations, and I met all these people along the way that wanted to help out. So in 2020, we started our active restoration program, as well as our volunteer program. And since then, I just added numbers again. We're up to 4.5 acres of invasive species removal and over 8,000 native Hawaiian outplanting.
Right now, Montayre is Protect and Preserve Hawaiʻi's sole employee. Among the educational and volunteer programs he offers are Uhau Humu Pohaku, or rock wall building, and site maintenance sessions he calls Super Chill Saturdays, which is what volunteers are doing, pulling invasive guinea grass and planting the native Ala Ala Vainui wahine.
Before all this happens, I didn't know the difference from any plant, invasive versus native or ecosystems. And that's why, I'm super stoked to see, a lot of the younger generation kind of, catching on at such an early time in their lives versus, all these other people. I'm almost going through, midlife crisis, basically, I'm, trying to figure out the purpose of life, when this should actually be just a part of your lifestyle, because we're all land stewards if we're all using the land for our resources. So, just planting trees is not going to work. So we have to kind of replace all these components in the ecosystem. So today we're planting a ground cover / kind of like a shrubby vine. Ala Ala Vainui wahine is actually in the mint family. So now we're going to do Oli. That's a Hawaiian chant. We're going to do Eho Mai. I'll be asking for guidance today in our kuleana or responsibilities. E ho mai ka ike mai luna mai o na mea huna noia o na mele e ho mai e ho mai.
After the chant concludes, the group hikes its way to the site chosen for maintenance. They split up into 3 smaller groups and set loose on the sprawling guinea grass with small sickles and pickaxes. That's when my opportunity to talk to Tyrone opens up.
What's most interesting about the story is how it's seemingly a contradiction, right? You're working with non-natural things, metal and
It's like
chemical oil,
right.
Oils and things like that.
Highest source of pollution in
Yeah.
the world, right?
And now you're working in nature
Right.
with natural things, trying to restore it. Does
that correlate?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I'm a realist too, right? So I could say do things with intent. Like, it's like we are going to cause some pollution, but what are you doing to counteract that? Like, how are you giving back? Are you, being carbon neutral? Are you intent with everything you do every single day, right? Whether it's plastic use or being wasteful or buying local. So, and like, that's my whole thing too, is that like, we're not asking for you to do a complete lifestyle change, but definitely to moderate and just to have intent behind your actions, no matter what it is. And that's relevant to everybody.
I imagine as a mechanic, there's a lot of little intricate details that you have to learn that is part of your job. How much of the underlying skill set of being a mechanic, how much does that play into learning to be a conservationist?
Like for me, it was, I always fascinated on how things work, and that's kind of why I became a mechanic too. So kind of like reverse engineering things. And same goes with nature, figuring out how it is and what the impacts we're causing, and then what's our best way to remedy it. And also with that is like finding ways to do things more efficient. I think me having that outside perspective and coming from like a place that is focused on more efficiency and production changed a lot of the processes that I do personally and during our conservation work versus like state government, other nonprofits. We went from like a goal of 1,000 plants a month, 1,000 plants a year to 2,000 to 2,500 plants a year. And all of our work is coming through volunteer community engagement. So it also shows that you don't need like a huge army of like professionals doing it. And it's also like giving back to the community and letting them get more connected back to the earth too.
Every place in Hawaii has a story, right? At what point did you do some investigation into the cultural history or the lineal history of this place?
So the first thing I did was basically Google the out of it. Like what's Pia Valley, why it's named that, where it came from. And just from like reaching out to like the nonprofits in the area, I was able to kind of, get the kind of like the background and history of it. And I wanted it to benefit the community. So they kind of went over like, well, we're lucky it went to you, but at the same time, good luck, because one of the main reasons that this land was left for the auction was because of rockfall liability. A lot of people, even the state and like land trust, was like, oh, we can't touch that. So it was like I knew if it was going to be done, I had to do it myself. But the lineage, like I was able to sit down with the late Laura Thompson, which was heavily involved with conservation in this area too, as well as the Voyaging Society. She sat down, she went over the whole family tree and like how they acquired the land and all that, which also made me feel like, part of the area and family, even though I didn't live here.
In Hawaii, land is such an important thing. What does land and putting work into the land mean to you?
It goes back to a relationship with Aina, right? Like it's so important, living off the land and having all these resources and being able to give back to it. Not only that, but the cultural significance of like having all this history and then people fighting wars and, having families here beforehand. It becomes just almost like family, right? Like, it's not only just giving you life, but it's all the history that goes behind it too.
When it comes to the history of Pia Valley, it's an interesting one. And if you've never heard of it, that's okay. It's located in an area most people know as Niu Valley.
That track down there in the 50s, they called it Niu Valley. But Niu isn't a valley, it's an ahupua'a.
That's Kaui Lucas. She lives in a house at the entrance to Pia Valley. She's a descendant of Alexander Adams. He was a trusted advisor to King Kamehameha I. It was the king who gifted the Niu lands to Adams in the early 1800s.
So the ahupua'a is Niu, and I think it's like 2,500 acres. And it includes two valleys, the valleys of Pia and Kupawa, and they are bifurcated by the Kulepeamoa Ridge that you see right here.
Many of Alexander Adams' descendants have recognizable last names like Lucas. Others you may know, Pfluger, as in the car dealerships, and Thompson, as in Nainoa Thompson. Kaui Lucas spent most of her childhood in Pia Valley. She says she remembers when the area was just a collection of small farms, and over the years, landowners haven't been particularly good stewards. That's why she was a little skeptical when she heard Tyrone bought the 300-plus acre parcel in Pia Valley. But Lucas says he's given her hope the valley can be restored.
I mean, he has done such an incredible job. I still dream every day, looking this way, that all the halikoa is gone, and the natal palm, and all the other invasives, and that they're local. And what Tyrone has proved is it can be done. And I love how he just did it. He was very, very good about developing relationships in the community here first. So he did it the right way, to his very great credit. It's a dream come true. I mean, I always wanted that to happen. And I'm so glad that somebody younger and with all the energy showed up to do that. I mean, it's remarkable.
Montayre says the ultimate goal for Pia Valley is to get more people in the community educated about the area and involved in conservation. He's also hoping to one day create an outdoor education center and build out a plant nursery on the property. Before I left, I had one last question for him.
If your mom were alive today to see you, what do you think she would say?
Oh, I think she'd be super proud. You know, I think about it too. Like, I wasn't into all this, you know, but she was actually towards the end of her life here. Like, she started doing a lot of more hikes and stuff. So I was like, I knew she would be like super stoked to be telling all her hiking buddies, like, oh, come out to my son's thing, you know. And my dad he's still alive. He always says stuff like, you know, we're super proud of you. So I'm stoked with that. And also, like, it was kind of like, not a sign, but it's like, I feel like it was her way of like giving me something to connect to, you know, to help with her leaving, you know, like gave me something else to have.
And that was Tyrone Montayre, the founder and president of Protect and Preserve Hawaiʻi, and Kaui Lucas, talking with HPR's Russell Subiono. We'll have a link to more information on the conversation page of our website later today. And don't forget, today's Arbor Day Hawaiʻi. Go out and plant something.